your name, your organization, your pronouns, and the neighborhood or community that you represent or live in. That would be great. And then other sort of general Zoom things, keep yourself muted if you're not talking, use the Slido Q&A, and you can also contribute through the chat feature. And then I'll take us through our meeting norms. So we'll work to create a safe space for people with lived experience and recognize all it takes to speak truth to power. Hear feedback, critique, and experiences as opportunities for growth and not as personal offenses. Everyone is encouraged to participate. You may be asked to share what you think, or we may ask for comments from those who haven't spoken. It is always okay to pass when you're asked to share a comment. When you speak, be brief and to the point. When you speak, state your name and where you live, working group and public meetings, today being a public meeting. Treat others with respect as you disagree or agree and value what's being shared. When in doubt, ask for clarification. Every participant's voice will be respected. Step up and step back. Allow space for others to contribute. Always remember that we work within a broken food system, and any critique of the emergency food system is a reflection of that and not a personal critique of someone's work or intent. And then I'm just going to go over the Boston Food Access Council value statements. So the Boston Food Access Council brings together residents, activists, thought leaders, organizations, farmers, researchers, and other diverse stakeholders to address equitable food access in the city of Boston, recognizing its role in the larger Massachusetts food system. BFAC asserts that consistent access to healthy, nutritious, affordable, and culturally appropriate food is a basic human right. BFAC seeks to create an anti-racist, inclusive, and participatory culture of learning by building trust and transformational relationships within the community by engaging residents with lived experience and hunger. BFAC aims to ground itself in a power-sharing model that honors and values all voices at the table, treating each with dignity and respect, and is trauma-informed and self-critical. And BFAC seeks to offer a space to help provide an equitable, community-centered platform for food access, affordability, and economic opportunity. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Catalina from OFA to talk about ARP funds.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you, steering committee, for giving us the opportunity to be here and sharing some updates that we have at the Office of Food Access, and about the ways that we are engaging and using American Rescue Plan funding. So can I get the next, please? So for those who doesn't know, the American Rescue Plan is an economic stimulus bill that was signed by the president in March of this year, just with the goal to support the country to recover of the COVID-19 and the consequences that we are living through our communities facing food insecurity or facing any other issues related with COVID-19. So the city of Boston will get approximately $558 million in the next 3 years. All this money has to be used by December 2024. And the first investment that the mayor has done, there were 50 million, and they were distributed in different departments. These are some of the departments here. I don't know how the allotment went to each of those departments, and maybe I'm missing one or the other one. But the point here is that the food access got like 2.5 million for this first investment. So next. Thank you. So I just want to give a little bit of update to everyone how we are using the first 2.5 million that we got. So we are investing 1.9 million in grants. Those grants that are safety net and outreach grants, and the food in equity in food as food access. These two grants are coming from the agenda that the mayor released in 2020, in February 2020. So we hear that from the community, and that's the way that we are responding to that. The two grants are open at this moment, and they are going to be open until September 17. And one is to decrease the stigma attached to all the safety net programs and emergency food programs, and do an outreach. And for the equity in food access, we just want to support community organization and CBOs, nonprofits who are very close with the community that is facing food insecurity to bring their ideas and their own solutions. So we have two levels of these two grants. Like we have a basic level that is up to $50,000, and we have expanded level that is up to $100,000. So if you want to apply or know more about these grants, you can go and visit in the Food Access webpage, and we have more information, or you can sign up for our office hours that we still have some time to respond questions. So we also did release a food sovereignty grant, again, because through the process to update the mayor's agenda, we hear that people really want to like grow their own food. They want to be able to learn how to grow food. And their lease on the community gardens, they were very long and they didn't have the capacity to like have spaces for these low income residents that they want to grow food right now. So we use $300,000 for the grants. The grants are being open. We received like over 600 applications, to over 200 of them that are low income residents. And we receive grant applications from 7 organizations like farmers and gardeners who are going to provide the technical assistance and are going to build and provide education to all the city residents that are going to receive the bid. So that is very exciting. We will be putting out who is going to be receiving the funding in the next couple of weeks. And other initiative that we're gonna do with this funding is cultural relevant food distribution and no cost at the Boston Public Schools, the Boston Hub Schools, community hub schools. There are 14 community hub schools, and we are hoping that we can start providing some additional services and additional support, food access support in these schools. We are going to be working with a vendor. It's going to be an RFP, and it's going to be in the next couple weeks that it's going to be out. So if you're interested, just be on the look, and we will be sharing with the Boston Food Access to share with all the network. So can I have the next one, please? So what is the plan of the city for the next allowment of American Rescue Plan Act? So the mayor has started a community engagement process with some community meetings. We have this between August and September. We have 6 at the city in different topics, and they also have a link on the webpage where people can just go, and it's a very like high level information that are trying to gather. Is like, what are the priorities that will invest this funding, and you can go through the survey, or you can call 311, and this is for the general. So now, what is our next step for the Office of Food Access? So they're gonna stop there and see any questions so far here on the timeline for the city of Boston. Okay, I will be here for a little longer, so if you have questions, I can respond that. So can I have the next one, please, Megan? So what is our timeline? So we're gonna be forming a coalition or advisory board to the city, to our office, who can help us to design the community meetings that are going to be happening in October. So the meeting with the CBOs who can advise us to draft the agenda of the community meetings and help us to do the outreach will be happening in mid-September. So by the end of the September, we will have like more idea of how we're gonna tackle, what we're gonna ask, and what is the information that we wanna gather from the City of Boston residents. In mid-October, we'll be hosting a series of community meetings open to all residents, organizations, and we're gonna have that in different languages. By the end of October, we're just gonna provide our recommendation to the task force, and after that, the mayor will release the American Rescue Act proposal and hold like more public comments, or a period of public comments for people just again, voice their concerns or the ideas for how this money is gonna be used moving forward. So next. Yeah, so that is the agenda. So here I just gonna first thank you to everyone. Happy to respond questions. We have like 3 very important emails here. So one, if you are interested to know about more the grants, we have an email that you can reach out to us. It's foodgrants@boston.gov. If you have other questions or you want to sign up at the newsletters where we're going to be giving updates about the engagement process that we're going to have in the next couple of weeks, you can sign up at food@boston.gov or call us to 617-635-3717. Or if you have like other additional comments or questions and you want to talk with me, there is my email there, catalina.lopezospina, and you can call me anytime or email me, and I will happy to talk to you about ARPA funding or other things that you want to address. So if you have questions, happy to respond. And thank you, Megan, again, and to the steering committee for giving me that opportunity.
Great. Thank you, Catalina. I'm going to turn it to Laura and Miriam from Project Bread to talk about their Boston Food Insecurity Report.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura, or Lauren, sorry. Would you mind just, yep, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. We are really excited to be here to talk to you about the research that we've done. So we just recently completed research about barriers to accessing SNAP that's been in the works since last fall. So we're really excited to share some of these findings with you. So first of all, why did we do this research? And if you want to go to the next slide, and the next slide, sorry. We know that SNAP has been critical for many people during the pandemic. And since March 2020, SNAP enrollment has increased by 21.4%. So you can see the number of people that enrolled in SNAP over the course of the pandemic. And if you want to go to the next slide, we also know that there are still a number of people who are eligible for SNAP, but who aren't on it for a number of reasons. So there are about 659,000 people who are eligible but not enrolled in SNAP in Massachusetts. And this is about 40% of the total number of people who are eligible for SNAP statewide. And of that group, 28% are children. So there's a large chunk of families and households that are eligible for SNAP but aren't receiving it. And if you want to go to the next slide, last year, as part of our larger SNAP awareness efforts, we really wanted to learn more about what barriers people were facing in applying or in using SNAP so that we could better understand them and then address them in our awareness efforts and our policy work so that we could help more people connect with SNAP. So we worked closely with the Boston Mayor's Office of Food Access and Catalina and the UMass Center for Survey Research. So we worked with OFA to think through the research and what we wanted to get out of it in Boston. And then we partnered with UMass Boston to actually implement the survey. And the survey started out with 3 different data groups. So we had a mailed survey that went to residents of Boston, a mailed survey that went to the rest of the state, and then an online survey that was shared out through social media and email by community partner groups in Boston. And OFA really spearheaded that effort and getting that survey out more widely to community organizations in Boston. And while we had a ton of great insights and data from all 3 of these sources, we chose to focus just on the Boston community data for a couple of reasons. But one of the biggest was really because it was a more diverse sample, both in regards to race and ethnicity, but also in regards to family structure and age. And so many of the responses to the mailed survey were white, older individuals who did not have any children living at home, while the respondents to the community survey included more families, younger individuals, and more Black, Latino, and Asian respondents. And we really wanted to make sure that we were looking at a broad group of responses for this survey. And so that's why we chose specifically to focus on this demographic. We got a huge response from this group, and the report focuses on the 823 responses that we received. And so now I'll turn it over to Laura, who can talk a little bit more about what we found in the report.
Hi, everyone. So what did we find? You can go to the next slide, please. So one thing we know is that the sample itself had a really high rate of food insecurity. Almost 80% of respondents reported sometimes or often worrying that food in their household would run out before they had more money to buy food. And if we compare that to the the US Census Bureau's Household Pulse Survey estimates around the same time that the survey was distributed, we know that about 19.6% of households in the state of Massachusetts were food insecure. So this is a very food insecure sample. Next slide. So we were really interested in the barriers that people faced when deciding whether to apply or enroll in SNAP. And we chose to talk about in the report sort of the 5 top barriers that respondents were reporting. Next slide. So the first and biggest category was misinformation. Almost half the sample reported concerns about taking resources away from other people if they got SNAP benefits, which we know isn't true, but it's misinformation nonetheless. The second highest reported barrier was computer access. It could be that people did not have internet access or some other important piece of technology that helped them navigate to food resources. Stigma in the form of fear of being judged by others was a concern. Roughly over a third of the sample reported concerns about being judged for using SNAP. Almost 37% of respondents reported that they were concerned about how difficult the application was, and that discouraged them from applying. And finally, there was sort of lack of awareness as a barrier. Almost a third of respondents reported knowing little or nothing about SNAP. Next slide. So we're also really interested in whether barriers to SNAP varied across race and ethnicity, something that really hasn't been looked at before. Next slide. And we found that fear of immigration status being affected was a concern, a pretty big concern for Asian folks as well as Latino folks in the sample. It was also pretty high for white folks, which was somewhat surprising for us. Next slide. We also found that fear of facing judgment from others was particularly high among Asian respondents. Over 50% of Asian respondents in the sample were concerned about being judged for using SNAP by others, which was a surprising finding for us. It's also important to note that fear of facing judgment from others was relatively high across the entire sample. So it's something that we need to work on. Next slide. And finally, we found that being able to apply in a language other than English was a concern among respondents, and it was particularly concerning for our Asian respondents and Latino respondents, which was, again, something we hadn't really expected to hear or see, considering there's lots of different languages that you can apply for in SNAP. So those are our big highlights.
And so in terms of our next steps from here, I think, these findings are really important to help us narrow in on the specific things that we can use for awareness and outreach efforts for SNAP, as well as making larger policy recommendations with, some harder data to back up things that I think, probably a lot of folks on this call know anecdotally and things that we have heard on our hotline. And so we've already started, really advocating for a number of the policy changes that we recommend in the report. We also have started to incorporate some of the barriers and misconceptions that we found in this report into our awareness efforts. So in the spring, we sent out a mailing that addressed some of the key misconceptions, such as, the fact that you aren't taking benefits away from anyone if you're applying for SNAP, that everyone is, who is eligible can receive benefits. And we actually saw a huge increase in callers calling our hotline, asking about SNAP, and really, we just heard that there was a lot of misinformation, and being able to address it really helped increase folks' interest in applying for SNAP. So we plan to definitely continue using these findings to push for greater awareness and outreach efforts, and would love to share with partners if this can be helpful to you in any way, as you are also thinking about outreach and awareness to the communities that you serve. And so I will pop a link to the report in the chat if you want to take a look at that. And then we're happy to answer any other questions if anyone has any. And if you have any questions at any other time, you can always feel free to reach out to Laura and I. I'll pop my email in the chat as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Miriam and Laura. I'm going to turn it to Catherine from Greater Boston Food Bank to talk about Hunger Action Month.
Thank you, Megan. Good evening, everyone. So if you're not aware, September is Hunger Action Month, and today is September 1st. So happy Hunger Action Month to you all. I think, am I sharing my deck, Megan, or is that being shared on the screen?
Yeah.
I'm gonna share it. Just
sorry,
give me one moment. Sorry.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sure. While the deck's being put up, I'll just share a little bit of background. So this is a national effort, primarily led by Feeding America, but it's gained some traction over the last 14 years that it's been running. And so we, Greater Boston Food Bank, as one of the food banks under Feeding America, has amplified and leveraged this month to just raise, acute awareness around the issue, and then sort of identify different ways in which we can engage the public around this issue around this time. So this month, and every year, I should note, every year they've had sort of some different way, gimmick or messaging component. This year they're kind of focusing in around this idea of choosing to end hunger. So everyone really has a choice. So many times, folks have to make a choice between, buying food or buying grocery, or buying, paying for their mortgage, or putting food, gas in their car. And, many of us have a choice to stand up against hunger. So that's really sort of the messaging theme this year. But if you, next slide. So I spoke a little bit about this, but so what is it? Hunger Action Month. It's in September. It's Feeding America's network's annual national campaign designed to inspire people to take action and raise awareness of hunger in the United States. We will make sure that I'll drop in the chat the link to this toolkit, but this can be shared with anyone. And really the idea is to get as many people engaged. It doesn't have to be a Feeding America or food bank thing. It's an opportunity to really engage, many different organizations and our local governments and any corporate or any really business organizations, individuals, anyone can participate at this time. There is one centralized day during the month that there's a lot of collective efforts. So, and that day this year is Friday, September 17th. There's a number of things that are going to be happening in the city of Boston. So if you haven't noticed, the color of hunger is orange. And so many of the landmarks across the city of Boston are going to be going orange in sort of symbolic solidarity around this issue. So be on the lookout about that. If you want to participate on that day, you know, wear orange, post on social media and share some information about, you know, how you're taking action or choosing to end hunger would be great. If you have any questions, just let us know. Again, I'll put my information in the chat. But there's a number of ways, obviously, that we can participate. And of course, being the Boston Food Access Council, we're doing a lot of these things throughout the year. But it's just a nice way to sort of maybe engage your family, friends, coworkers, networks around this issue that maybe aren't as engaged on a daily basis. So, you know, asking them to, you know, donate, fundraise, volunteer, advocate, and just getting involved in their community. Next slide. The slide is a number of activities that are going on for the Greater Boston Food Bank, but I think, as I've said to lots of different partners around talking about this campaign, use this, leverage it. If you're doing an event, you know, it's a great way to sort of say, hey, did you know it's Hunger Action Month? And even, you know, just using that as sort of a catalyst to have a conversation or a theme to sort of fold into an event that you're having. But for all of you all to know what we're planning. So today obviously is the kickoff of the month. We've sent out a number of communications sort of announcing it. It was great timing to have this meeting at the same day so that I can share with all of you. Next month, there is a virtual fundraiser around with Boston 25. There's going to be a number of stories around the community, around various people, not only just in Boston, but throughout Massachusetts, who are participating and taking action around hunger. Obviously, we have an election coming up. Tuesday, September 14th is a perfect time to exercise action to choose hunger, vote for candidates that are prioritizing hunger relief efforts, and talk about it. Share that on social media. Share why you're voting for those individuals and keep them accountable. On Friday, September 17th is Hunger Action Day. As I mentioned, there's Boston landmarks are turning orange. Number of things I should mention. Thank you to Catalina. The Office of Food Access is doing a number of things. The mayor's putting out a proclamation for the city of Boston that it is officially Hunger Action Day in Boston. They're going to be putting out a number of pieces of information and hanging a banner on City Hall, lighting the City Hall orange, and I'm hoping the mayor will also share why she is choosing to end hunger as well. Another important election date to leverage Hunger Action Month is Tuesday, September 21st. It's National Registration or Voter Registration Day. Again, we've got a major election coming up in the city of Boston, huge between the mayoral and city council, lots at stake here, and a lot that could be impacted to our work here within the council. On September 23rd, there's another all-day Channel 5 is doing an awareness day, and there'll be a lot more stories again just around partners who are doing exceptional work around this area. And then obviously the end of Hunger Action Day concludes the 30th, but again, it's just an opportunity, just an inspiration to leverage any event that's going on during the month and use this time to talk about this issue. Next slide. So I'm going to go through this, the next couple of slides pretty quickly because I think that they're really specific to the food bank. But I think it's just, again, it's an opportunity just as a reminder, the different ways you can encourage people to participate during this month of awareness. Obviously, donating is huge. Donate to your local organization, donate to a national organization, whoever you feel is, compelling you, but donations go a long way from no matter who you're supporting around this food security work. So next slide. advocating. So we've given a number of ways you can advocate during Hunger Action Month, and we'll be working with our policy working working group to make sure that they've got some of these actions in line. And I think it's a great opportunity for that policy and advocacy working group to take some actions. There's a number of things going on right now at the national, state and local level in terms of advocating and supporting policies that will advance food security here locally in Boston. So there's lots of opportunities, and so we're encouraging folks to just take action and advocate. So some ideas here, we'll share more with the policy and advocacy working group. Next slide. So I think above all else, this is a time of awareness. So it's just an opportunity to share information, data, stories, experiences. You just heard an awesome report from Project Bread. Share information about it. Share information about Boston Food Access Council, how to get involved, how to actually take action year round, not just in the month of September. So some just ideas there, but you can take that to social media and hope that everyone within the council will at least post one thing on social media during Hunger Action Month, just to get us moving. I think one of the biggest things that has been challenging during COVID is recruiting. And so it's just a really great time to talk about what we're doing here and recruiting more people to be part of these conversations. Next slide. Next opportunity is volunteering. So I think it's a great opportunity, again, to encourage folks to volunteer yourself. Choose your local neighborhood, organization, see if they need help. We offer volunteer opportunities at the Greater Boston Food Bank, but there's so many more opportunities throughout the city. And I just will use this opportunity to plug Boston Cares. Obviously, they have a lot of opportunities. We did partner with them to identify specific volunteer needs at hunger relief organizations throughout the region. So take a look. If you look at bostoncares.org/GBFB, you can actually find localized volunteer opportunities that way as well. Next slide. And as I said, go orange, choose to end hunger, raise awareness, wear orange to continue to amplify that message. Thursday, September 17th is Hunger Action Day. That's when the city will be going orange. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell your family member, and just share information. If you know of if you work at a building, or if you are, know of an organization that does have the capability to go orange, please encourage them to do so. We definitely have City Hall, the Zachem Bridge, South Station, I think the Rose Kennedy Greenway. There's a number of the Prudential, a number of city landmarks are going to be going more orange and shouting about why they're doing that. So take a look on September 17th. And if you have any questions, if you go to the next slide, I think that's the end. Yes. So if you have any questions, please let us know. I will drop some information in the chat and also a link to that deck that I just shared. And just hope that everyone might just take advantage of this time and continue to amplify the good work that we're all doing every day and encourage others to get involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. I'm going to turn it over to a fellow about Fresher, Adam, and he's going to talk about the 1115 waivers.
All right. Hi, everybody. Very nice to spend the evening with you all. Thanks to BPAC for making time for this. So I'm going to talk about the 1115 waiver process and what it means for food access, and generally how some trends in healthcare are creating powerful opportunities to link healthcare and food access and food justice work and hopefully sustain it in a really new way, a really powerful way for years to come. Megan, next slide, please. And I apologize in advance for my misguided animations that are going to make your slide advancing tricky. Okay, so for those that don't know, About Fresh empowers people to access foods needed to be happy, healthy, and hopeful. We have two core programs. We have the Fresh Truck program, which are the beautiful green school buses that operate produce markets in 20 neighborhoods around the city, week in, week out, 6 days a week. And we have Fresh Connect, which is a prepaid debit card and analytic platform that allows healthcare organizations primarily to cover the cost of healthy food for their patients. And Fresh Connect has two purposes. It's a service that makes healthy food more affordable for people that need that support. But we have a transformational goal of recruiting healthcare as a long-term sustainable stakeholder in food access. Next slide, please. So there's this really powerful moment right now because of some stuff going on in healthcare to enlist the healthcare sector as the first new national stakeholder in food access and justice since 1946, when the federal government got involved with providing school lunches or funding school lunches. So since then, there hasn't been a single new entrant or stakeholder in food access at an institutional, long-term, sustainable level. We have the chance to recruit healthcare as that new partner in food access and food justice. And we have that chance for three basic reasons. Healthcare in this country is ridiculously expensive, especially compared to other industrialized countries, and it generates worse health outcomes. So over the last 10 or 15 years, in an effort to change that and reduce the costs and improve outcomes for everyone, physicians or healthcare providers, hospitals, community healthcare centers have come under increasing pressure to help people stay healthy and not just treat them when they're sick or ill, but to actually cultivate and support health. At the same time, those healthcare providers discovered kind of the common sense that the care they provide is actually not the strongest influence on our health. So it's a powerful influence, but only accounts for maybe 20 or 30% of our healthcare outcomes. The vast majority of what makes us healthy is about the food we eat, the place we live, and the general level of stress and anxiety in our lives related to any number of issues, but certainly people struggling with poverty are facing an enormous number of stressors that are contributing to poor health. Okay, next slide, please. So in that context, expensive healthcare, more pressure on providers to focus on health, and the awareness that food and housing and other factors drive our healthcare outcomes. All insurance companies, whether they're private, like many of us have private insurance and they're getting into this, and so are the public insurance organizations. And just as background for folks that aren't familiar with how insurance or public insurance works in this country, there's two basic forms. There's Medicare, which focuses on the needs of folks 65 and older. It's entirely federal, so it's funded by the federal government and regulated by the federal government with just small variation from insurance plan to insurance plan. And then there's Medicaid, which focuses on lower income households and children. It's funded by both the federal government and state government and regulated at both ends. So the federal government has a lot of regulatory power, and so do our state government. Okay, next slide. I'm glad there's, oh, here are the animations I promised. Yay, look at that. Okay, so there are two major opportunities within each of those, within each of those two insurance systems. Within Medicare, there's this program called SSBCI, or the Special Supplemental Benefit for the Chronically Ill. It's a new part of Medicare Advantage, which is itself a subpart of Medicare, that allows insurance companies or Medicare insurance companies to support food access and other needs with between $20 and $80 a month for people who are chronically ill, at high risk for hospitalization, and have a diet-related illness. So this is this program is growing really, really quickly. It grew by 568% between 2021 and 2020. It still is not widely available though, so it's growing fast and is a big part of the future, something for all food access organizations to be aware of, that a lot of money is probably going to be coming in into food access through Medicare in the future. And then there's kind of the topic of the day, which is Medicaid and the 1115 waiver. So remember what I said at the beginning, that the federal government and state governments collaborate to regulate and deliver Medicaid. When a state wants to do something creative with how it administers Medicaid, it wants to experiment with new ways to pay physicians or new ways to cover care, they'll apply for something called an 1115 waiver, which is essentially like, hey, we want to do something different. Here's our application to do it. Give us permission. And that's what the 1115 waiver is. So Massachusetts has one of these things, and it's had it since 2018. It's these waivers are 5 years long. So the current waiver expires in June of 2022. So not that far from now, less than a year. And this waiver allowed for a lot of experimentation and innovation within Massachusetts Medicaid, including $149 million fund to support food access and housing stability specifically. And that fund has been distributed or used for the last 2 years to support those things and in different ways. So hospitals are contracting with housing organizations and food access organizations to deliver services that accomplish those goals: greater food security and greater housing stability. Okay, you can move along, Megan, thank you. There are those excellent things. Okay, so there's a lot of money coming from healthcare into food access, both through Medicare and through Medicaid. That brings with it huge opportunities. A new sustainable stakeholder, which is what I was talking about at the beginning, improved health equity or opportunities to improve health equity, an opportunity to cultivate a prevention mindset in healthcare, opportunities to connect community-based organizations and local agriculture directly to healthcare providers at every level, from the hospital to the community healthcare center. And a lot of money coming to local food economy, whether that's, again, that local agriculture, small corner stores, grocery chains, et cetera. But a lot of money can possibly come into the sector. But this is coming with real risks, so that I think are important for all of us. So I'd say one of the major risks is that food or food access and food justice could get overly medicalized. And I'm sure many of you have heard the term "food is medicine," and it's a term that many of us in this work use because healthcare, it's appealing to the healthcare sector, but it carries some downsides. That food, which plays an enormous number of roles in everyone's life, will just get kind of pigeonholed as part of a medical program. So that has some risks, in terms of how food is considered and thought of and talked about, and especially in healthcare, but I'd say even beyond that. I think there's another major risk that because there are going to be hundreds of millions of dollars coming from healthcare into the food sector in the coming years. There's a real risk that money will attract private interests that are looking to capitalize on this opportunity and privatize as much of that wealth and funding as possible. And they could do that in any number of ways, certainly in ways that actually create barriers between CBOs and healthcare providers. So again, something to be on the lookout for, but a real risk. And then, of course, there's a risk that the policies won't change and healthcare will not become a long-term sustainable partner in food access. But we are going to try to keep that from happening. All right, next slide, please. I can skip this one, just for time. Okay, so here's how to get involved with this work. The number one way to get involved is through the Food is Medicine Massachusetts Coalition. And again, food is medicine can be a problematic phrase, but remember it's aimed primarily at the healthcare sector. But this is the place to go. I'll put this link in the chat after we're done. There's a couple of things I want to highlight as resources on this website to help you join the effort to support the 1115 renewal process. I should have mentioned that up front. So like I said, the waiver expires in June of 2022. There's a lot of work going on right now to support the state's application for an extension to that waiver, a 5-year extension. So that's the kind of the core of the work right now, to get that waiver extended and actually give the state more flexibility to administer Medicaid and address food insecurity and housing stability in more creative ways. So next slide. Okay, so these are resources on the FIMA website. The first one is the Food is Medicine State Plan and Roadmap. the roadmap is just a really succinct, easy way to get a grasp of what FEMA is lobbying for and advocating. Everything from integrating the local food economy to meeting the basic food access needs of households and cultivating the systemic change that will sustain those changes over time. And then there's much more detail about that in the Food and Medicine State Plan, which goes into specifics about how Medicaid, how the state can better integrate food into healthcare and better integrate food access and food justice into its planning. All right, next slide, please. Sorry, one more back. That's weird. Okay, there's a slide that is, oh, there it is. Okay, so in addition to promoting the 1115 waiver, which again, I'll put a bunch of information and links in the chat about how to do that. There's a bill making its way through the Massachusetts House, Senate and House of Representatives to support a food and health pilot program that will bring resources into statewide to do three things. To increase access to medically tailored meals. And these are, for those that haven't heard the term, these are essentially prepared meals for people that are dealing with an acute severe illness that's heavily diet dependent. And these meals are tailored to support their healthcare goals. Then there's medically tailored food packages, which are essentially the healthy ingredients that folks can use to prepare their own meals. And then finally, nutritious food referrals, which cover a large gamut of programs that simply increase the ability of people to afford or access the healthy food they need. So the plan is to pilot a statewide program to support these kinds of health and food access integrations, generate some data, and then hopefully support that work over the long term with Medicaid or other funding. And there's information about all of this on the website. All right, lastly, so to get involved, here's the person to contact. Jessica O'Neill is the executive director of Just Roots. She is organizing the CBO and local food task force on behalf of FEMA. And if you are on this call and are representing an organization in any part of the food access landscape, from local agriculture to food distribution to other forms of subsidizing or improving the affordability of food, anywhere in the food access, please email Jessica at the email address here on the screen. She would be happy to talk to you about the CBO and local food task force and talk to you about getting involved. This is an opportunity for statewide impact, not just in Boston, but to cultivate or increase your voice at the state level and shape state and to some extent federal policy around the integration of food access, food justice, and the healthcare landscape. So hopefully that wasn't too long, but if you do have other questions, you're also free to reach out to me. I'll put my contact information in the chat along with all the links I mentioned. Thanks everybody. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks, Adam. All right, so we're going to intermission now, and I'm going to pass back to Lauren.
Thanks, Megan. I'll just pause for a brief moment. Does anyone have any questions from the presentations that we've had so far? I'm not seeing any come in anonymously on the Slido. So if you do have a question and you want to drop it in the chat, that's always an old school way to do it too. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and do our little attempt at an intermission. So as I said at the beginning of the meeting, this is a new approach for us. So we asked at the top of the meeting if anyone had anything additional to share, if your organization or your work or something that is going on in your world is not represented on the agenda tonight. We want to provide space for community members to share those updates. And so I know we have one request. I believe it's from Marissa Otis at Children's Hospital. Marissa, if you want to go ahead and unmute and share what you have, please go ahead.
Sure, thanks, Lauren. Hello, everyone. I'm Marisa from Boston Children's Hospital, Office of Community Health, and I just wanted to share a job opportunity that we have open currently related to food access. We are hiring a supervisor for a food pantry that we will be opening in Jamaica Plain in the Mildred C. Haley Housing Development in collaboration with BHA, also next to our own health center. So the food pantry, it's exciting. It'll serve patients and BHA residents and community residents. But in terms of the job, we are looking for kind of a mix of food knowledge, inventory, any experience in the food services industry, serve safe, that type of stuff, but also community knowledge and being able to, work in the community. So I will pop the link into the chat for the job, but really if someone comes to mind that has really any food related experience, I encourage you to share this opportunity with them, or ask me any questions now if you're wondering what some of the qualifications might be. Thanks.
Thanks, Marisa, and apologies for the mispronunciation there. But we'll look forward to seeing that in the chat. Or is there anyone else that had something similar or different in this space to share? While I leave the airwaves open for that, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to sharing our next portion of the agenda. Okay, so just to recap again, if anyone hasn't seen this slide yet, you can go ahead and scan the QR code and that will get you onto the Slido website. So the next portion that we wanted to do, we generally try in our public meetings to provide some sort of opportunity for community connection or breakout discussions in one format or another. And what we decided to try this time is actually sort of an interactive poll. So hopefully I'm going to do this right. But the first question that we have, if anyone has anything to share here, the two questions that we're going to ask are sort of, what do you have to give? What resources do you have available for the community, either personally or professionally, that folks in this room might not be aware of, that folks watching the recording might not be aware of, that would be helpful for folks when we talk about work in food access. The second question, which we'll get to in a moment, is what do you need? So imagine this as sort of a community message board, but let's leave the slide open for a minute on what do you have to give. And if you have anything that you'd like to share, go ahead and we'll document all the responses and share them out well. So I'm going to hang out here on this slide and see if folks have anything to add.
Just for clarification, you want the answers in chat, is that correct?
No, if you just scan the QR code on your screen, that'll pull open the page where you can enter your responses. And that way we have them all in one place. I will also add that if we don't know who is submitting it, so you have the option to either put it anonymously, or you can just sort of drop a note. You can actually make yourself known in the platform. You can say who you are, or you can put in your response, how to access that information. Okay, so just to recap on the screen so far, we're seeing that someone has time or ability to coordinate resources, although I'm not sure who posted that. We have from the Food Project access to affordable fresh food at farmers markets, the ability to do a build a garden program residentially, as well as greenhouse accessibility to grow your own food. I'm not sure who is saying they have a very diverse clientele, but then we have the comment from Becca Berkey at Northeastern, who has a number of connections as well as resources available. I'll give it one more minute before we switch to the next question. I know everyone's getting used to a new platform, and thanks for bearing with us. We're trying to find ways to make sure that we can ensure engagement from the audience in a way that is hopefully accessible. Food assets experience from another part of the country, eager to share ideas, successes, failures, and learnings. Okay. Well, we're excited to have you all here in the room and participating in VFAC. Thank you, Spencer. And I'll go ahead and kick off the next poll. Oh, actually, wait, I'll wait one more second. So we're getting another response in from Rescuing Leftover Cuisine, which matches food donors to recipient organizations based on specific logistics and bridges the gap via our network of volunteer rescuers using food rescue technology app. Okay. So as I sort of teased before, the second question is, what do you need? What resources are you looking for? Who are you hoping to connect with? What might this community support you or your work with? Okay, so we are seeing, and I, yes, just dropped one in myself, but so far we've got the need for more residential participation and awareness of the programs at the Food Project. A need for networking and participation or engagement in BFAC from the community. I added that we are seeking some contract positions around bilingual culinary education to support our network of nonprofit partners. So you can reach out to me if you know anyone that might be interested. And then again, Becca sharing it, she's always seeking partners, both for places to plug students in and connections for faculty interested working in this space, or people who see connections between their work and Becca's. Again, I'll leave it open for, one more. Rescue Electric Cuisine, can you support to help spread the word throughout the state of Massachusetts? All right, well, hopefully this was a good way to engage, but if you do have feedback for us, please feel free to let us know. We again are trying to find additional ways to ensure that we're bringing community engagement into our public meetings, as well as into our working group meetings and other things which you'll be hearing from us on momentarily. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this and switch back over to the presentation. But again, you're hopefully seeing that this is a community of folks that either have resources or need some resources, or maybe both. And hopefully folks are finding ways to engage within this network. But thank you all for sharing. All right, so that was our intermission, so to speak. And let me just find the presentation one more time and we'll go ahead and get back to that. Okay. All right, so you're gonna hear from me for one more moment. I think we've updated the network a few times at this point. That one of our goals as an organization at BFAC is to eventually be our own nonprofit. We have spoken to a number of folks in the space and other food policy councils that have had this experience before us. And I think the lesson that we as a steering committee and the fundraising working group have learned is that fiscal sponsorship is likely the best first step towards building the infrastructure and continuing to grow the organization until we are at a point, maybe 2, 3, 4 years down the road, where we would want to seek 501c3 status on our own. So we wanted to provide everyone with a brief update this evening on where we are at in that search. I will admit, unfortunately, it is taking a bit longer than I think we originally expected. But what we have found so far is that we've spoken to 2 of the major fiscal sponsorship agencies in the Eastern Massachusetts. One is TSNE Mission Works, based in downtown Boston. While they are a very large fiscal sponsor agency, they are unfortunately not accepting applications until sometime early next year. And because we are, I would say, so early on in our stages of growth, we are not likely to be a fit for their models. On the flip side, we've also spoken to the Marion Institute, and they do appear to be a potentially much better fit for BFAC. They have also recently launched the South Coast Food Policy Council and have done a lot of work in a very similar network-based FPC as it's gotten up off the ground. But we're not going to necessarily immediately go with that choice. We are still continuing to do some research and have conversations to ensure that we're making the best choice for this network. And so a couple other things that we're considering, we are also talking to the Nonprofit Incubator, or NOPI, which is listed here on the slide, later this month. And we also wanted to just sort of take a moment this evening to sort of say, if your organization, or if you know of an organization that does provide fiscal sponsorship services for small community groups such as BFAC, that would be something we'd be interested in hearing about. So please feel free to reach out to us. You can contact us at bostonfoodaccesscouncil@gmail.com, or you can drop us a message in the chat. And the last thing I will just flag here is, as I mentioned, a lot of this research and outreach has happened through the folks in the fundraising working group. Both of our working group co-chairs have moved on from their role. They've actually moved on from the area. So they're no longer here. And we are actively hoping to identify someone who can take that spot, either one person or two people, to take over the leadership of the fundraising working group. If it's not obvious by the name and by what we've just outlined, the fundraising working group is really focused on both getting us through this formation process and into the fiscal sponsorship relationship, as well as then eventually sort of seeking opportunities for raising funds for BFAC, so that we can move some of the initiatives that we would like to see forward, and so that we can also invest more in community engagement. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Annalise, but first to answer Christine's question, what are the requirements for a fiscal sponsor beyond holding 501c3 status? If I'm understanding the question correctly, you're asking, sort of what does the fiscal sponsor agency need to have in order to sponsor us? And I'm not sure that I can answer that question, but yeah, thank you for clarifying that that's what you're asking. There are very few fiscal sponsorship agencies in the area. These are organizations that have the back end resources administratively, financially, sometimes from an HR perspective, sometimes from a tech perspective, depending on how their fiscal sponsorship model works. They provide sort of the back end infrastructure for small organizations like ours, usually again at sort of a small cost of every dollar that we bring in as a nonprofit, but they then do all of that processing and all of the financial paperwork on our behalf. So. You're welcome. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Annalise to talk about our election process, and just an edit on this slide that should say that Joy Gary and Lauren Colombo will rerun. So Annalise, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Lauren. Basically, yes, it's that time of year again where we are plugging our elections, which will take place in December, for our steering committee. And so both, we have some exciting opportunities this year. 5 seats are open for election, including both co-chair positions, as Lauren will return, but has decided not to seek re-election as co-chair. And I myself have also, unfortunately, relocated from the area for work, and will be stepping down as a steering committee member and the co-chair alongside Lauren. So the only real stipulations with the openings are that 3 of the seats available have to go to community members who may work in a food access organization, but aren't necessarily bringing the resources and commitment of that organization to them and their BFAC participation. That's really just, as you guys all probably have heard and agree, to maintain a balance between, organizational interest and purely community representation. So there are 2 organizational seats available, and our application is available and open starting today, and it will be open for the next 2 months in order to have our election in the December quarterly meeting. And then members will serve 2-year terms beginning effective immediately after the December public election. So we're actually also currently working on creating a guide, sort of a training guide and a process for handing over the current iteration of the steering committee, although half of it will be consistent, so it won't be a totally shocking transformation, but stay tuned for that, and we encourage you to reach out to us for updates on that and any additional questions, and please apply using the link which will be put in the chat if it's not there already. Thank you, guys.
Are there any questions about elections? I do have the Slido Q&A open on another screen, so if anyone wants to submit an anonymous question, or if you want to ask a question in the chat, that's fine as well. Well, even if you are maybe not up for running yourself, please do share that information publicly and widely with your community. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to rerunning steering committee member Joy Gary to talk about the mayoral forum that we hosted. I guess it was last month now, because it is now September. So go ahead, Joy.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren. Can you hear me well? Just want to test that out. Cool. So yeah, last month, our policy and advocacy working group led and pulled together an amazing mayoral forum focused on food access and policy issues. The candidates in attendance were Acting Mayor Janey, City Councilors Michelle Wu, Andrea Campbell, Anissa Asabi George, and former Economic Development Chief John Barrows. And if you missed that forum, we do have links to it. It was recorded, so you should be able to find that YouTube link in the chat. And though the questions were very pointed, it was a swift forum, and so it did allow for us an opportunity to ask more, or allow the candidates to give more in-depth answers to what their plans are for making food system changes in writing. So we do have a couple of links to that. City Councilors Andrea Campbell and Michelle Wu have responded, and so you can find those on our website, but also the link should be in the chat. In general, we found we are wanting to know what everyone else thought of the forum. And so the Slido is coming back up on the screen. So feel free to put your answers to the question, what did you take away from this mayoral forum, or what stuck out to you? And we'll just take a few minutes to think about that and get some responses to that. And as you're thinking of responses, one thing I did want to point out is that the forum was just a testament to the power of working groups. We say it time and time again that the work happens in the working group. So it's just another example of what can be done when we are pulling together our resources and our talents and our skills within those working group sessions and developing opportunities for greater change. Awesome. So as people are still, this poll will still be active, so you can feel free to continue to make any comments within that poll. And just wanted to thank Sarah Menango and the entire policy and advocacy team for their work in pulling that together. It was a really phenomenal time. Okay, so yeah, I guess some of the things that people have taken, I just want to read a couple of them. Some of the things people took away is that it seemed like the centrality of the food security to their platform was so varied, and it was helpful to learn more about candidates around an issue that they're passionate about and also really love the format. And then most of the candidates did a nice job of connecting their own experience with our food system and with their intended policies. Final one. And then Christine Becker noted that we have a highly talented and professional group of individuals that are a part of BFAC. Awesome. So again, thanking the P&A team for their work. So moving on to elections.
Bear with me
No
for a
worries.
minute, Joy. It's coming back.
Yeah, no worries. We're just gonna have in a few seconds, they're just gonna pop up a couple of reminders, just reminding the importance of being active during the election. This election cycle, this is gonna be an extremely important time for us, for Boston and really our region. And so we'll, in just a couple of moments, we'll have some of the important dates that we want to remember. Yeah, so September 14th is the preliminary municipal election. Then there's October 13th is voter registration deadline, and then November 2nd is the municipal general election. So if you're wanting to register to vote, if you're not already registered, please visit the link in the chat and make sure that you, not just you, but your sphere of influence is also voting, keeping each other accountable to the work that we're all wanting to see done in the system. Okay, and cool. So now I think we're just going to move on to working group updates. I'm going to pass it on to Sarah Menango of the Policy and Advocacy Working Group to give some updates.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing to help improve food security in the Boston area. And thank you for attending the BFAC public meeting this evening. As Catherine said, September is Hunger Awareness and Action Month, and we really appreciate your work in the food system. As Joy discussed, the BFAC Policy and Advocacy Working Group helped organize and run BFAC's first mayoral candidate forum. We sincerely appreciate the time and talent shared by the members of our various working groups. This was truly one of the most enjoyable group projects that I've worked on in a very long time. We have a phenomenal core team, and it's a pleasure to see many of them present in the meeting this evening. As for the forum itself, it was a privilege to have the opportunity to hear from our mayoral candidates and our mayor on where they stand on pertinent issues related to food system policy. Initiatives like this can provide an opportunity to educate the public and our government about Boston's food system concerns and needs. And when we open municipal level public dialogue, we further the development of pathways to improve policy, practices, and public investments in our local food system. These conversations will hopefully flourish and continue for years to come. So we applaud our partner food system organizations for their advocacy and policy work in this area, and we thank them for sharing that with us tonight. Our working group members are currently discussing possible ways to open discussion on municipal food system policy with city council candidates as well. So stay tuned. And since our last public meeting, the BFAC Policy and Advocacy Working Group continues to monitor and advocate for food system policies on a state and federal level. We also continue to explore the policy and advocacy initiatives of our members' organizations, which has led to helpful discussion, opportunity for capacity building, and identification of potential synergies that can lend to shared resources and support. We hope that partner organizations like Project Bread, the Greater Boston Food Bank, and About Fresh will continue to join us to share insights on how we can support their policy and advocacy initiatives. So if you're not already a member, we welcome you to join one of our working groups. If you're interested in participating in the BFAC Policy and Advocacy Working Group, please feel free to reach out. I'll place my email address in the chat. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Sarah. So unfortunately, Orlena, who is our chair or co-chair of the Community Outreach Engagement and Education Working Group, was unable to attend this evening. So I will do my best to recap what's happening in that working group on her behalf. And I will just share that if you haven't seen it yet, I think back in July, Orlena and members of the group have worked on launching our first website, and it is at bostonfoodaccesscouncil.org. You can find pretty much all of the information that we're dropping in the chat throughout the night on that website, including our steering committee application, a link to our YouTube channel where you can watch the recording of the mayoral forum, and plenty of other resources and information about getting engaged with BFAC and joining as a member and joining our working groups, and what our meeting schedules are as well. The other thing that I will call out for this working group is that there are a lot of BFAC goals and food access initiatives that require this exact type of work, the outreach into the community, the engagement with the community and education. I think the SNAP barriers report speaks to that. The work that that folks in this space are doing really needs to be shared and connected with folks in the community. And we need leaders. As Joy just said, the work is really happening in the working groups, and we are looking for a co-chair to work alongside Orlena, because this is a lot of work, to put it simply, and it's not something that we would expect or ask someone to manage or lead alone. Just to recap for everyone here, the role of a working group co-chair is to ensure that the group is meeting on a monthly basis, ensure that the group is receiving updates on what is happening in the meetings, both with agendas sort of coming before the meetings and notes coming after the meetings, engagement with the working group members and the initiatives that are taking place within that group. And so we would love to see folks in this community really step up and take a role within these working groups. Both, again, we have the opening here at the Community Outreach Engagement and Education Group, but also, as I mentioned earlier, in the fundraising working group as well. And with that, I will sort of leave it at that for COEE, and I will turn it over to Christine Becker to speak about the work that's happening in the Mayor's Food Access Agenda Working Group.
Great. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, wonderful. I can't see myself, so I just wanted to make sure that you could hear me. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you again for the presentations by Project Bread, the Greater Boston Food Bank, and About Fresh. For those of you that I've not met, my name is Christine Becker, and I serve as the co-chair for the Mayor's Food Access Agenda alongside Hei-Yen Kim, who also serves as co-chair and the deputy director with the Mayor's Office of Food Access. So what I'd like to do is just spend maybe, a few minutes of giving a really high level view of what we've done over the past 3 meetings. As many of you know, this is a fairly new group and have had the privilege of working with a lot of really talented professionals. So if you'll click to the next slide for me, Lauren, be awesome. So yeah, here's just a really quick overview, meeting recaps. We'll talk about the goal that we're focusing on as a working group, which has really come from lots of data that we've received through feedback from the group, which was in the form of surveys and live polls and discussion groups. And then we'll talk about next steps for the future. So the next slide, this is just really to kind of give everyone an idea. You know, our first kickoff meeting was in June. The idea was really to introduce ourselves to one another and also the goals that were set in the mayor's agenda. And so from there, we had goals 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. And so Hayen and I designed a survey that was submitted, and we had, you'll see, here's the data that we received. So there was interest in goal 1, 2, 4, and 6, which was the objective 2. From there, we actually presented that in the July meeting. You can click to the next slide, Lauren. And we did a couple of live polls. So first poll was to kind of get a feel for, you know, who didn't vote in the actual survey, where they stood on these goals in terms of their interest level, and had some discussion, and then had a final poll. And so from that, we concluded that goal 2 was a top priority, and second priority would be goal 6, objective 2. Just to recap, Lauren, next slide, please. Thank you. This is the goal 2. So strengthen and connect existing programs to better serve the community, not overlap efforts, and use resources more efficiently. There were 2 objectives, and this is the second objective, which is organize opportunities to convene and develop the food access network in Boston. You can connect to the next, go to the next one. Thank you. So what we ended up doing in our last August meeting is we had the group who presented the data from the final poll and the survey, and really broke out in discussion around 4 questions that would help us to understand goal 2 and what particular steps we might take. And I had those questions right in front of me, but essentially it was breaking down. Here we are. I wanted to read them. What does strengthening and connecting existing programs to better serve the community look like? How can we use resources more efficiently and not overlap resources? What does convening and developing the food access network in Boston look like? And what scale do we want to work on? So really, in order to make sure that we don't create redundancies and we can create a solution that is scalable, which could be easily implementable, is by really taking an audit of existing resources. So this is basically taking all the information from our breakout groups. We used a service called Jamboard, and really summarize these key takeaways. So auditing existing resources, really heard from our group and the importance of having a centralized resource, so some sort of platform and hub where we could, you know, coordinate, collaborate, and communicate with one another and those that are being served by our respective organizations. And to take a multi-layered approach, like we need to make sure there's citywide initiatives, but also maybe more of an emphasis on the neighborhood. So again, starting with maybe small scale solutions. The next slide, this is just some more data that came from a survey where we wanted to make sure we could take inventory of the collective experiences, talents, and skills and interests from our group. And so you'll see on the left side, this is a visual map, basically just depicting the different skills that we've seen. So the size of the bubble, you know, correlates to the number of individuals that have this particular skill. And then on the right side, this word cloud really was, these are some of the same words that were coming up in the surveys, which strategically align with the goal that we're pursuing, which is around collaboration and coordination. So in the future, we'll design more of a formal skills matrix around task forces. And as we have solutions, potential solutions in place, we'll be able to match our really gifted members based on their skill set. that is all. And if you have any questions, here are our emails. There's Christine, michellebecker@gmail.com, and hayen.kim@boston.gov. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Now we're going to turn it over to another Christine to talk through some next steps on the BFAC end.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for your attendance tonight. It's been really fun to watch these working groups blossom and come up with creative solutions and find where their passions really lay. So we would really encourage you, if you have any interest in becoming part of the leadership of these teams, whether it's the COEE team or the fundraising team, we'd love to have you put in an application to be a co-chair. So like we said before, that's available up on our website, and the fundraising group is really essential in order to help us kind of form as a nonprofit, if that's the direction that we're going to take. So if you're interested in helping out with that, please reach out at bostonfoodaccesscouncil@gmail.com. In addition to the working groups, co-chair positions, we also need you to plug in your interest in the working groups as well. So please check out the website and find where your skills fit in and plug into those working groups. Encourage your professional colleagues or community members to also become members of BFAC in general, and get involved in those working groups as well. Apply for the steering committee, like we've mentioned before, and I think I said it wrong, that application is up on our website. And do check out the new website and our overall social media presence, which we'll have, excuse me, on the next page. Are we still looking for an intern for the fall?
Hopefully not.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, didn't have a chance to update the presentation. But that said, we are, we will always accept intern applicants for future terms as well. So, if you know someone, feel free to share it.
We've had really great interns so far, so it's been impressive. So, and then lastly, put on your calendar right now that our next BFAC meeting will be December 1st. It's a public meeting at 6 p.m. Again, I think the plan for that is to be virtual as far as the current plan, but watch for any new developments on that if the pandemic takes a really wonderful turn. So I think with that, we will close the meeting out. Here are our links to our social media and email. And then information on how to register for the public meeting is in the chat as well. So thank you all for your attendance tonight, and we look forward to seeing you in December, and if not, at one of the working group meetings in the meantime. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.